everyone, and welcome to What's in Rosie's Toolbox. My name is Nell Carpenter, and I'm the Youth Program Manager at Vermont Works for Women, and I'm here to dive into my toolbox with you in order to learn a little bit more about what's inside. Each episode, I'll pick a different tool and call in a professional to help me explain what it is and how to use it. Then we'll give you a challenge to try at home. Wrenches, check. Screwdriver, check. Self-care tools, check. Grab your toolbox and tune in. Hey Kat, welcome to What's in Rosie's Toolbox. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Nell.
Yay, so could you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you are right now and kind of what's surrounding you?
So my name is Emil. I am a woodworker based in Fairfax, Vermont, and this is our shop. I make furniture for a living, and you are seeing our bench area and our tool shop, and you can see here the big machines that we use every day, joiner, planer. When you're an advanced woodworker one day, you'll be using these you'll be using these too. But today I'm just going to teach you how to use a screwdriver.
Yay! So we're so excited. Last week we learned about power drills, and this week we're going to learn about screwdrivers, which, according to my understanding, have kind of a maybe similar function. So I'm wondering if you could first start off by telling us maybe what protective equipment we would need to wear if we were using a screwdriver.
Yes, it's always important whenever you're doing any woodworking of any kind to use eye protection. So I will be wearing my eye goggles, but because there's no loud sound with the screwdriver, you do not need ear protection.
Great, good to know. So I don't have eye protection today, so I'm not going to be using that.
Also, if you have long hair, it's always good to put it up in a ponytail so it's out of the way and doesn't get caught in any machines. Even a little screwdriver can catch a piece of your hair, so I'm going to put my hair up.
Good point. Safety first. So just start with the basics. If you could just tell us what you might use a screwdriver for. Are there different kinds of screwdrivers? I have a couple here that are different, and I really could not tell you what you would use the different ones for. So maybe if you could just give us an overview.
Yeah, so there are two main kinds of screwdrivers that you'll probably encounter, and they are a Phillips head, which looks like this. It looks kind of like a 4-leaf clover or a little square on the top with 4 things jutting out. And then there's a flat head, which is exactly what the name sounds like. It's just a flat piece of metal. So those are the two main kinds of screwdrivers. And you'll use screws to attach 2 pieces of wood together. And these are screws. And the difference between a screw and a nail, you may have seen a nail before, but this is a screw which has these round kind of like out juttings that go around the whole screw.
What's the benefit of using a screw versus a nail?
So those kind of ridges that go all around it actually kind of grip into the wood rather than just attaching smoothly through all the way through, which you can imagine can come out quickly. Like if you have an ice cream cone in something, it can get pulled out really easily. But if you have these ridges, they help create friction and resistance in the wood to hold 2 things together.
Got it. Great. And so because it has these ridges around it, you couldn't just like take a hammer and smash it into something.
Exactly.
By being spun.
Exactly. That's how you get them actually into the wood, rather than if you think about if you just kept jamming this into the wood, the circle that it would create would go the whole size of the ridges. So this kind of like works it into the wood to create that resistance.
Got it. So do you use screws and screwdrivers when you are making furniture?
We do for certain things. We're traditional woodworkers, so we actually don't use screws when we're putting together the most important parts of the furniture, like connecting a table leg to a table apron, but we do use them when putting the top on a table or anything that needs to get replaced or taken apart, we'll use screws.
Got it. Good to know. So traditional woodworking, you are maybe just cutting the pieces of wood so that they fit together and they don't need nails or screws.
That is what is so cool about traditional woodworking is that, yeah, you don't actually need you can have a whole piece of furniture, you could have a whole bed, you could have a whole bookshelf with no screws whatsoever. You could actually, everything can just be one piece and everything is cut perfectly. So just a little bit of glue and the shape of the wood holds everything together.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Yeah. So we do use screws sometimes, like you said, in woodworking. What's a project or a structure that like always is going to have screws in it? Like if I were to look around my apartment right now, is there something that would like pretty certainly have a screw in it?
Well, your house itself would have screws in it. So
there you go.
Anything made by a carpenter. So maybe if you have a porch outside, you'll probably see screws in the planks of wood on the front. Walls. There's also, like in my house where everything isn't traditional furniture, you can see screws in the bookshelves that we have, or in the back to attach the back of the bookshelf to the sides, or if you look underneath your couch, you may see screws holding that together. So it is used, screws are used in a lot of furniture, just not in traditional,
Got it.
traditionally made furniture.
Yeah. So the last question I have before we get to see a screwdriver in action is, if you were building something, say you're building a house and you were trying to decide what kind of screws, is there any advantage to having the Phillips head screws, so the one that has that kind of cross or plus sign, versus using a screw that you would use a flathead screwdriver with that's just a line, or is that just random and up to choice?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that. One thing is that when you're using screws for house construction, you also can use drills to put the screws, which you probably learned last week. But hold the phone, Jared. Why would one be one and one would be one? I mean, one thing is that aesthetically they look nicer. Like we use look like this for.
Yeah, we use flathead screws to make them appear nicer. Typically Phillips head screws would be used in like construction where you're not really seeing the screws as much. So flathead screws are pretty decorative.
Should I say it? Should I?
That's
she
fine.
say that?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah.
For filling that in. Yeah.
This is the advantage of having a business partner. You get to share the knowledge.
Definitely. I certainly don't know all the answers and don't ever expect one person to.
Good.
So maybe if you could just show us how a screwdriver works. I was like playing around. I just have this little piece of wood from a project and I put my screw down and I had my screwdriver and I just really didn't get very far. And I'm not sure if you're supposed to go in one direction versus another direction. But maybe you could just walk us through a little demo of how you would use a screwdriver. That'd be great.
Great, I would love to. So the first one, I'm going to do a demo with the Phillips head first. So we have pre-drilled holes in the wood, which you can do with the drill that you learned last week. That makes the screws go in way, way, way easier because they're not kind of splitting apart the wood and having to do all the work themselves. So when you have holes in the wood, which you can see here, you need a screw that looks like it fits that the center of the screw would fit in that hole. So then you place the screw on the hole. And because this screw has this plus sign shape at the top, that's how I know that it needs a Phillips head. So I take my Phillips head screwdriver and you kind of fit it in there and you'll see that it's kind of snug and there's resistance. And you put gentle pressure down on the top of the screw and turn it to the right. Slowly. And so you may have learned in school, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So that's how you can remember. You're always turning it to the right to go in. And you can see it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And there's fewer ridges. And then if you want to take the screw out, you just turn it to the left, and you need to keep a little pressure on it, just because if you have no pressure, it kind of like can wobble or fall out. So you just want to kind of maintain that connection between the top of the screw and the screwdriver. And then the other thing you may encounter is picking the right screwdriver. So for example, if I have this flathead screw that I want to screw in, I have two different flathead screwdrivers here, and you can see one has kind of a narrow top, and the other has a thicker top. So if I'm going to do this, I want to screw the screw in, I might put it in here, and then I might take my thinner one and say, oh, this looks good. It's a flathead. I'm good to go. But it's really hard to move it when there's only this little bit of metal in that long slot.
Yeah.
So then I want to try this bigger screwdriver where you can see it really fits most of the way across the top. And that's way, way, way easier.
Got it.
To screw in. So you kind of have to pick the appropriate size screwdriver for the project that you're working on and for the screw to match the screw.
Got it. Very cool. And another question that you don't have to have the answer to, but I'm curious about is, I've seen there are some, here, let me see if I have one, pretty short screwdrivers. So like this little teeny short one, and then this one is like pretty lengthy. Is there a reason you would ever pick this little nubby one over this nice big one?
You know what? It's actually kind of personal preference. I'm looking right now at a little guy that I love using, who is also a Phillips head. And for me, actually, sometimes I do prefer these little ones. If you have littler hands, you just kind of want to get up close and personal.
Oh, yeah.
It can actually be easier. Sometimes these, so it really is just personal preference or the project at hand. Say, for example, I might, if I'm screwing in something where I can't actually get my hand in all the way, this long piece might be useful because I can go like this from afar. If you know, say it's a thin drawer face and I can't stick my hand in there. But there's no reason you can't use, I actually love using little ones. There's no reason you can't use this if that's what you have or if that's what you prefer.
Got it. Great. Was there anything else? I feel like I have all of my questions answered. Is there anything else, any tips, any fun tidbits about screwdrivers or how you use them that you want to share before we close off?
One little tip you may have heard about stripping screws, which is something you may have heard one of your parents talking about. And that happens more with drills. So it's actually using screwdrivers is actually kind of a safer way to put screws in than a drill and can protect both you and the screw. So if you're ever intimidated by using a drill, you can always just use a screwdriver. And so what stripping a screw is, if the drill bit on the drill kind of starts wearing away at the metal on the top of the screw, that's stripping the screw. That's much harder to do when you just have your hands and you don't have like the intensity of the drill. So it's not something to worry about when you're using a hand screwdriver.
Got it. So screwdrivers are human powered, whereas drills are powered by a battery or electricity if you have a cordless one or not. And it's powerful enough to kind of mess up the pattern on the screw, but you wouldn't be able to do that with your hands. So that's
exactly. So like, unless you're like actually Wonder Woman and covered in muscles, it's very unusual that you would be able to strip a screw using a screwdriver. And that's the same reason it's relatively a safe tool to try out yourself.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for showing us how to use a screwdriver, giving us some tips, showing us your shop.
Thank you, Nell. It was great to have you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And we'll have some projects attached to this video. Some if you do have a screwdriver and some screws, some if you don't happen to have one. But we hope that you all at home have learned a little bit more about screwdrivers and can maybe go find one in your house and check it out. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Nell.